Today's program is about the sea. Do you guys remember last summer when you were on the beach? Well, this is a poem called Souvenir by Eve Merriam. I bring back a shell so I can always hear the music of the ocean when I hold it to my ear. Then I feel again the grains of sand trickle sun-warm through my hand. The seagulls dip and swoop and cry as they dive for fish, then climb the sky. The sailboats race with wings spread wide as the wind spins them round, and they glide, ride, glide. My lips taste a crust of salty foam, and sandpipers skitter, and crabs scuttle home, where I built a castle of yesterday that the high tide washes away, away, while I keep the shell so I can always hear the music of the ocean when I hold it to my ear. Well, today we have two special guests. We have two authors from Memorial School. They are in the 4th grade. And the first author is Matthew Burwell, and he has written a book entitled The Battle for Atlantis. Is that right? And now this is a book that was entered in a contest of young authors throughout Massachusetts. So now Matthew is going to present his story. Matthew?
Once upon a time, the stone men from Mercury, led by evil King Cronoa, landed on Earth and conquered the underwater city of Atlantis. That was 2,000 years ago, but the Atlanteans still claim their land. The Atlanteans are secretly starting their own army, led by King Meniere, to overthrow King Cronoa. The date is October 29th, 1159 AD, and the place is the Royal Atlantean Conference Room. Right now, King Meniere is discussing the battle plans with the troops. Since you already know how to get to the Stone Men's castle, I will just tell you where to attack, said Meniere. General Kaufmann's troops will attack on the left side of the castle, Prince Zenam's troops will attack at the right, and my troops and I will smash down the drawbridge to attack. We will all try to take Cronoa or any stone man as a prisoner. Is that clear? Yes, the troops said in unison. Good. You may go now, said Meniere as the troops walked out of the room quietly. Later that night, King Meniere was talking to his wife, Queen Zenar, about the battle. Zenar, said Meniere, I am sorry I couldn't tell you earlier, but I must go to the surface tomorrow to battle the stone men, because we mustn't be their slaves anymore. Yes, I know, said Zenar very sadly. I wish you luck. The next day, a few minutes before the battle began, Meniere prayed that the Atlanteans would win the war so they wouldn't be in slavery anymore. Right after he prayed, he led his troops to the surface. They were soon followed by Kaufmann's and Zenam's troops. The whole army wore special helmets so they could survive at the surface. Since the Atlanteans could only breathe in water, the helmets were filled with water. Meanwhile, at the Stone Men's castle, King Cronoa sensed something wrong, so he asked for his crystal ball.
God, come here and bring my crystal ball,
said the grumpy king. A few minutes later, the god handed the crystal to him, saying,
Here it is, my lord.
In the ball, Cronoa saw some Atlanteans battling some stone men while they were on land. Cronoa knew that it couldn't have been in the past because the Atlanteans only had one battle with the stone men, and that was underwater. He knew it had to have been in the future.
Help, gods, help,
gasped the startled king as the servants rushed toward him. They all asked him what was wrong. After he calmed down, he answered,
The Atlanteans will attack soon, so we must defend the castle. Get every single stone man you know and warn them of the danger. Everyone knows their post. We must be ready for anything.
At exactly 11:29 a.m., the Atlanteans attacked the Stone Men's castle. First, Kaufmann's troops attacked at the left, then Zenam's troops attacked at the right. After 5 minutes of hard work, Meniere and his troops finally managed to smash down the front drawbridge. At that moment, many stone men came rushing toward them to stop them from getting to Cronoa. Meniere's troops cleared a path through the stone men so Meniere could reach Cronoa. Now, let's get back to Zanom. It was a very rough battle between Zanom's troops and the stone men. They attacked it on the right, and in that section, the stone men were masters of kung fu. Zanom's troops managed to capture 5 stone men without getting injured. It was a very violent battle between Kafmir's troops and the stone men. The stone men in the left side knew karate very well, but Kafmir's troops managed to capture all of them, even though Kafmir died in the process. After those battles, Mynheer finally came to the throne room where he found Cronoa. When they met, they decided to duel to the death. "You monster," said Mynheer as their swords clashed. "I won't let you attack Atlantis again."
Ha! You know you cannot win this war,
said Cronoa. Mynheer was so enraged that he struck Cronoa, and then Cronoa broke into 1,500 stones. When he was sure that Cronoa was dead, Mynheer ran to the shore and told the other surviving Atlanteans to regroup with their prisoners. Zanom and his troops came with 5 stone men. Kafmir's troops came with 3, and Mynheer and his troops came with 8. Each prisoner was put in a cage at the surface, while the Atlanteans held the funeral of General Kafmir underwater. After the funeral, the Atlanteans held a victory feast. There were many kinds of fish and plenty of whale meat to eat. When they were finished eating, they danced in Mynheer's ballroom for hours. During the dance, Zanar talked to Mynheer. "Mynheer," said Zanar, "I'm so happy for you because you won the war, but what happened to evil Cronoa?" "Zanar, he crumbled into many small stones when I hit him, so we are free," said Mynheer. Minutes later, they heard all of the Atlanteans saying, "Long live King Mynheer! Long live Queen Zanar! Hooray!" That's the end.
Thank you. Next, we have Sherry Selwyn, another 4th grader from Memorial School, reading her book, and it's entitled A Mermaid to Remember.
Once upon a time, there was a beautiful mermaid named Lily who lived at the bottom of the sea. She had long, wavy blonde hair and starfish as bows, and a beautiful fan-shaped tail that moved ever so swiftly when she swam. But Lily was a sad mermaid because she had 1,000 brothers and sisters. Her parents couldn't even remember their names. Poor Lily wanted to impress her parents so that she could stand out from the others. She practiced swimming quickly, and she practiced her tail swishes. She tried to be the wisest, she tried to be the prettiest, she tried to be the best, but still she felt she couldn't impress her parents. "I need to do something special," she thought, "but what shall it be?" So she decided to swim to land to seek her adventure. As she took a short rest on some large rocks, Lily was unaware that she was being watched by a wizard. "My luck! Just the ingredient I need for my potion, mermaid fins." The wizard approached the shore in order to catch Lily in his net. But luckily, at that moment, Lily felt an evil presence and quickly dove into the water. As she went deeper and deeper, the waters got colder and darker. Something was wrong, and suddenly she couldn't move any further. No matter how hard she tried, her tail would not move at all. What in the world could be happening? Well, an underground earthquake was causing the caves to collapse. "I must go back and get my family to warn them." And at that moment, she wrenched herself free and swam quickly to warn her family to leave the area. She found her mother and father after a while, just as some tidal waves could be felt. Everyone scattered. When Lily finally found herself in a safe spot, she realized something different about herself. When she had tried to pull herself free from the rocks, she had left her tail behind. As she looked down, she saw now she looked more like a human. With that realization, Lily felt both sad and happy. She knew she could not rejoin her family anymore, and that was sad. But she knew she had saved her family from an awful tragedy, and she was glad. She knew her parents would remember her now, and that day she made a promise to herself that each of her own children would be special.
That was great. Let me have this book for a minute. Why don't you sit right there, Sherry? Now, aren't you all proud of these 2 authors from your school? My goodness. And these bound books were the products that both the 4th and 5th graders did.
No, but just the fourth.
Just the 4th. Oh, the 5th grade didn't finish theirs, huh?
No.
Oh, well, the 4th graders in Mrs. Young's class came up with books like this. And Matthew's looks like this, too, but it's off at the contest right now. Yes, there were pictures in this book, but we had to have them redo the pictures so that they would fit into TV. So you're seeing the pictures as we go along. Now, those were 2 terrific underwater stories. And there are lots of stories about life under the sea and the creatures that live under the sea. Now, legend has it that there is a kingdom under the sea that is ruled over by the king and the queen, and they have many beautiful children. There's no water in this kingdom. It's sort of filled with a misty green atmosphere, and the light comes from great luminescent globes. And the walls of this kingdom are encrusted with jewels that sparkle in the green light. Now, the children of the king and queen of the sea are beautiful, and there no one ever grows old. There is nothing but feasting and dancing and singing in that wonderful kingdom. But sometimes the children come up to our world, and you might see them on our beaches. They look like you or I, but they are much more beautiful. Now, in order to travel through the ocean from the kingdom under the sea to our beaches, they take many different forms. Sometimes they are seals, and they come up to the beaches and take the form of the beautiful children of the sea. Sometimes they are mermaids and mermen. Some of these mermaids have tails like a fish, but sometimes the mermaids have legs. And as they travel through the ocean, in order not to drown, sometimes they wear little hats on the side of their heads, and sometimes they wear capes that keep them from drowning. And this is the story of The Mermaid's Cape by Margaret Wetterer. Once there was a young fisherman who lived by himself in a cottage near the sea. He had no mother, no father, no sisters or brothers, no wife, no children. Every day he would go out fishing with his friends in their boat, the Curragh, and sometimes they would throw their nets into the sea and the nets would come back filled with fish. And sometimes they would throw the nets into the sea and the nets would be empty. And sometimes they'd throw the nets into the sea and it would be half full. Well, one afternoon, late in the afternoon, the fisherman and his friends went out in the boat and they threw their net into the sea and it was about half full. And they came back to the beach and they divided up the fish. And the friends went home, for they had wives and children waiting for them. But the young fisherman, the handsome fisherman, had no one at home. So he sat on the beach, mending his net as the sun was setting. And as he was sitting there, a mermaid was washed ashore. She came up on the beach and she sat on a rock. She had her shimmering green cape about her, but as she sat down, she took off the cape and put it beside her on the rock. And she began to comb her long dark hair and look at herself in a mirror. And the seals and the seagulls came closer to her. And then she began to sing. The fisherman had never seen or heard anything so lovely. And all the birds came from miles around to listen to her singing. The fisherman cautiously walked across the beach, and he reached up, and he grabbed the mermaid's cape and backed off across the beach, holding it tightly towards him. The seagulls flew up to him and tried to pull it away, but he held it so tight They could not wrench it from his grasp. The mermaid saw what happened. She crossed the beach, and she held out her long white arms imploringly. "Give me back my cape, for without it I can never return to the kingdom under the sea." The fisherman looked down at the mermaid with such love and such longing. He wanted her for his wife so much. He clasped her cape to him and shook his head. He hoped that she would be happy as his wife, though it would be a hard life for such a creature of the sea. He hoped that in time she would come to love him. And the mermaid realized he would never give her back her cape. So she said, "I will do whatever you ask." The fisherman took her by her hand and led her home. And he put her to bed in his bed. And when she was sleeping, he looked about his house for a place to hide the cape. The cape was warm and damp and smelled of the sea. He wadded it up in a ball and felt in the fireplace for a loose stone and pulled it out and shoved the mermaid's cape deep within the chimney and replaced the stone. The next day, the fisherman went to the priest and said, "I wish to marry the mermaid." "No," said the priest. "You must not marry such an unnatural creature. Marry one of the girls from our village. Marry one of your own kind." "I will marry no one but the mermaid," said the fisherman. And his friends pleaded with him not to marry the mermaid, for though she looked like one of the girls of the village, with long legs, beautiful dark hair, they knew she was a different sort, a creature of the sea. So at last the priest agreed, and on the next Sunday, the mermaid and the fisherman were married in the church. And afterwards there was great feasting and merrymaking. There was food and drink and dancing and singing. But the mermaid ate nothing. She drank nothing. She would not dance. She would not sing. She would not laugh. She would not smile. The mermaid became a clever, dutiful wife to the fisherman. He tried as hard as he could to please her. Every day he brought her presents, ribbons for her hair, flowers, shells from the sea. But she never laughed. She never smiled. She never sang. Every day when he would come home, he would find her standing on the beach, looking longingly out at the sea. Well, after 7 years, the mermaid gave birth to a baby boy. And as she put him in the cradle for the first time, the mermaid smiled. And when the baby cried, she sang him to sleep. "At last," said the fisherman, "the mermaid is happy." And the boy was named Brendan, after the sailor, saint, and navigator. And he was a handsome boy. He had the red hair of his father and the sea-green eyes of his mother. And his mother, the mermaid, taught him everything about the sea. And his father, the fisherman, taught him everything about fishing. And when Brendan was 7 years old, his father took him out in the boat, the Curragh, for their first fishing trip. And when Brendan threw the net into the sea, it was filled to the brim with fish. And every single time thereafter that Brendan cast his net in the sea, it was filled with fish. "Well, what do you expect?" said the other fisherman. "After all, his mother is a mermaid." Well, after several years, they became quite rich with all those fish. And the fisherman looked at his wife, the mermaid, and said to Brendan, "Your mother is grown old before her time. She was not suited for such a hard life. Her face is lined, her hair is gray, her back is stooped. I will go to the village and get a girl to help her with the hard work around the house." So the fisherman went off to the village, and the mermaid was out in the garden. and Brendan was alone in the house. He sat before the fire and thought, Father has told me that he will give me some money from every catch of fish that we bring in. And I'm going to save up my money and I'm going to buy a present for Mother. Maybe some pearl combs for her hair or coral beads as a necklace. Now, when I get all this money, I'm going to need a good hiding place. Now, where shall I hide my money? Maybe there's a loose stone here around the fireplace. And he found the loose stone. And he pulled it out. And he reached in and pulled out a green cloth. It was warm and damp and smelled of the sea. What can this be? Thought Brendan. I'll go ask Mother. Maybe she knows. And he ran out to the garden and said, Mother, do you know what this is? And the mermaid looked up and she saw her cape in the hands of her son. And she stood up tall and strong and straight and reached out for her cape and threw it around her shoulders, smiling. And the years fell away from her face. And she shook her hair, and there was no gray, but it was long and dark once again. And the mermaid ran down towards the ocean. Brendan ran after her. Mother, come back. And the fisherman was coming down the road, and he saw his wife running into the sea, too, and he ran in after her also. Brendan and the fisherman waded into the ocean, but a great wave rose up before them with the mermaid in it, her cape wrapped about her, and she said, Stop. Where I go, you can never go. But I will love you forever. And she disappeared. Brendan and his father went back to their empty, empty house. Brendan went to bed, but he could not go to sleep. Then they heard from outside the sound of beautiful singing far away. It grew louder and louder. And Brendan smiled and went to sleep. And ever after that, the nets of Brendan and his father were always filled. And every night, the mermaid sang them to sleep. So this next summer, when you go down to the beach and you build sand castles and you find shells, remember some of these stories of the sea. The story of Atlantis, the kingdom underneath the sea, and the stories of the mermaids. And who knows, maybe you might see a mermaid on the beach this summer.